song in itself had everyone on my timeline, in my circle, on the phone with me through text, like, yo, have you heard this song? Have you listened to it? And it brought back just a sense of exactly what I believe he was trying to do. Brought back the sense of Puerto Rico. Like, we're in Philly and we're Puerto Ricans and we appreciate it and we aspire to be the best Puerto Ricans and we're proud of our cultura, and like the Puerto Rican parade, we're going to show ourselves. But it was like, this is our signal to the world that we matter so much more. Like, Puerto Ricans matter so much more, and our history is important. And those people who have gone before us, like my grandmother, God bless her, and all those other old school Puerto Ricans have left us with so many great memories of the island, of being Puerto Rican. That's where a lot of our like identity has come from.
Welcome back to Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Bomba Live on YouTube. That is the best place to find us. We premiere our episodes every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and whatever time they feel like it is in Arizona. But all jokes aside, familia, this is the show you've been waiting for. This is one of the few places where Latinos and specifically Puerto Ricans are at the table having these important conversations and bringing the diverse voices from our communities together to discuss the important issues, not only in politics, culture, personal development, that are the conversations you're having at your kitchen table, while you're playing dominoes, while you're at church, while you're dropping up, you're waiting for your kids to come out of school. And this is unfortunately, there's few places like this. So this is the show you've been waiting for, familia. Thank you again. And please subscribe to Bomba Live on YouTube and find us Bomba Live and Bomba Live PR on social media. We want to continue the conversation that we've been having throughout the last few weeks on the show about not only the dangers and how we can defend and protect the gains we've made, particularly around education. And as we promised, and this incredible Latina leader committed, we want to bring some of the top voices and advocates that are on the front of this fight to protect the most vulnerable children in our society, particularly through education. And so I'm really proud to introduce someone that's just not only a great friend to the show, but a fierce advocate, someone that let me tell you, she has no problem speaking truth to power. This woman has been the executive vice president of the American Federation of Teachers since 2019. She is amongst many accolades, the highest ranking Puerto Rican woman in the labor movement, the first Latina officer in the union's 109-year history, and is also vice president is also an executive board member of the AFL-CIO, another incredible power base for labor and working people, and just a great friend to the show and someone that I admire and I know will not only inspire you, but inform you and make you feel through our faith and through our commitment to our community, nuestro compromiso, that we're going to get through this very difficult era in our history. Familia, welcome to the show for the first time. Really honored to have her on for the American Federation of Teachers and the Lower East Side, Evelyn DeJesus. Welcome, Evelyn. It's been too long. I'm so glad you're finally on Bomba Live. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here today. As you know, I love this guy so much. He's a brother to me. And we've worked several projects together, campaigns together, and he doesn't stop. He just doesn't stop. And his energy, my energy, you got to be careful, right? But we got to get that work done. So thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. You know, hey, Losaida, we don't play it. That was,
lower.
That was one of the, one of my great compadres, Daniel Rodriguez, is Lower East Side guy, and got a chance to hang out in Alphabet City a time or two. And Evelyn, we want to have in this brief time we have with you, and I know you're very busy, we really appreciate it. We want to get your take on what's happening kind of broadly, but also there's a lot of people struggling with this moment, either as educators, as my co-host Christina Vega, who you just heard from, is 25-year educator in her own right, as activists, as people of faith, and just concerned parents about the future of their children, the future of their country. So, and I know your team we're gonna share throughout the show resources where people can tap into the great work of the American Federation of Teachers, helping our community on a lot of fronts. So why don't we just start from the top here, Evelyn? We talked about it on the show last week with Christina about the attacks on the Federal Department of Education. So why don't you just catch people up on what's happening and how this particularly impacts, how does this impact our children? And if you have a thought specifically about how it impacts our Latino children, because a lot of people hear these headlines and really, have a hard time understanding what it means.
Correct.
For this to happen. Well, it's going to get transferred to the departments. Maybe they're just saving a few bucks. So let people know kind of the danger afoot here with the Trump administration around the dismantling of the Federal Department of Education.
Okay. First of all, that's a great question, Ray. Thank you for that question. And I'm going to get a little maybe technical. So just bear with me because I want to lay the ground down because there's a lot of misinformation out there and people, they hear it. They hear little tidbits and they don't understand it. So I hope that I can clarify some of that. First, there's the symbolic impact. What does it say about a country when a new president, as one of his first acts, tries to abolish the federal support that gives the next generation a shot at a better life? What does it say when a president decides to attack knowledge and crush the spirit of fairness, equity, and empathy that drove Lyndon B. Johnson to pass laws to help his former school students, mostly Latinos at that time, and by the way, who didn't have shoes? Maybe Trump cares about opportunity for his own kids or his friends' kids or his donors' kids, but not all kids, no todos. After all, 90% of America's 50 million school children attend public schools. So first, there's the symbolic impact. Then there's the dollar impact. Not lots of folks think of the Department of Education as many people think as the Department of Ed as some big kind of huge government bureaucracy. That's been the right wing talking. Those are their talking points for decades. But in fact, it's the smallest department in the federal government with until a few weeks ago, about 4,000 staff. The $100 billion or so that the department spends on K-12 education accounts for about $1, un peso, out of every 9 spent on public schools. But that dollar is super important because it has crucial purpose to level the playing field. Federal supports give opportunity for poor kids, kids with disabilities, first-generation college kids, English language learners, and kids who live disproportionately in red states, where, to be blunt about it, states and cities spend less on public education. They're opportunity agents. The Department of Ed pays for physical and occupational therapists, speech therapists, paraprofessionals, and teacher aides, and for before school lunch programs and after school programs and summer school programs. Closing the department will hurt. I'm going to give you some facts here, some data. Closing the department will hurt 7.5 million kids with disabilities, 26 million kids from low-income families, 5.5 million kids who are English language learners, 13 million kids who get financial aid for college, and 12 million kids who benefit from career and technical education programs. The department is also the nation's biggest bank, and right now, the students' loan system is broken, which is why the AFT sued the administration last week. The previous president tried to fix, as you well know, the student loan system, partly because we successfully sued Donald Trump's first Secretary of Education. Now he's just snapping it in two, spiking loan payments of borrowers and trying to destroy the public service loan forgiveness program. This administration is trying to eliminate opportunity for kids in order to hand tax cuts to the wealthiest people in our country. It's robbing from Pedro, and Peter's parents to pay Paul. Look, everyone's in favor of more efficiency. We all want that. So let's find ways to accomplish that. But this isn't efficiency. It's cutting the heart, el corazón, y la alma out of the department that does its job. It's why 63% of Americans squarely oppose eliminating the department, including 64% of independents. That's why my union president first responds to reports of the administration executive order to close the department. What did she say? We're going to see you in court. That's what she said. And that's where we're going.
Eso es, and thank you, Evelyn, for giving us that incredible overview. What do you say to people um, that might say, well, isn't education a state issue anyway, state and local issue, and won't this kind of cut out the middleman and provide more resources for our states? What do you say to people that have that misconception?
But as you well know, that's like I said, that $1, 1 out of 9, that balances the playing field. Many of our children are not that they don't have access in the same way. As you know, that's something that Congress has to do. He can't arbitrarily do that. That's number one. Number two, states do have control, because the money comes from the federal government and they can control it. But there will be no oversight. As you well know, there's things that are earmarked. Who's going to oversight? If there's no Department of Education, I think of Puerto Rico. Think about Puerto Rico and what has happened in Puerto Rico with the governor, changing of governor, all of that. So when the oversight is there and the money is bureaucracy, because you have somebody that's telling you can't do this, you can't do that. If there's no department, if there's no fox in the hen house, what happens?
That's right. And we've seen this in other issues affecting the Latino community. So let's keep it real. So like thinking about on the health side, we've left it to the states to implement the Affordable Care Act.
Correct.
And for people that aren't aware, the two biggest examples that impact Latinos are Florida and Texas. So there is hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million Latinos alone, and people of color, certainly over 1 million people of color combined, in those two states that fall into what they call the Medicaid gap.
Correct.
Which is, if those Republican governors had accepted the federal money and administered the federal money properly, we would have hundreds of thousands of people that would have health care that do not have health care today. So similar things could and would happen. Let's keep it real, particularly in those red states.
Correct.
Where, you really think if we leave it up to Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and the governor in Georgia and some of these other communities, that the Latino kid and the Puerto Rican kid that just came here from the island that's an English learner, or the Latino kid that is a Spanish-speaking a child on the spectrum, or is a gay child that needs support and we need to monitor, don't get discriminated against, you really think they're going to get the support they need? We need that federal oversight and the federal expertise, because how many people that we know that have been teachers in classrooms, including the former secretary himself, Cardona, that are policy experts, researchers, provide best practices for our children. Evelyn, can you speak a little bit more about how this would impact the education in Puerto Rico? You've been on the front line.
Okay. So in Puerto Rico, approximately 50% of the education system budget comes from the federal funds. So 50% of that money comes from federal funds. Closing the Department of Education will have a direct impact in the programs and services students in Puerto Rico receive. Our affiliate, we have an affiliate in Puerto Rico, la Asociación de Maestros, is sounding the alarm regarding the urgent need to protect students, to protect teachers, to protect public education. So you could only imagine half of that budget slash, which is the biggest budget in Puerto Rico. And even with that money, the money is not getting directly into the schools. Like you purchase something, it might take 9 months to come. By the time you get it, the child is already out of your classroom. And Cardona tried to reshuffle that and redesign that and cut out the bureaucracy. So imagine now, 50% of that money will be cut. And then what happens? But in Puerto Rico, la Asociación de Maestras, we have 26,000 teachers. They're no joke. They're gonna go, they go to the streets. You know how our Puerto Rican people are. We go out. So we sounding the alarm. We're working with them. Randy's on top of it. I'm the point person there with my team. So we are very, very well aware, and hopefully we can come. We're gonna be in there and making sure that things could go as right as possible and protect our children.
This it's so personal for me, Evelyn. I know it is for you and so many people watching, not only for the children of the island, but also for the teachers on the island. My mother, She initially studied when she studied at Interamericana in Puerto Rico, Barranquitas. You know, we're from the campo, Orocovis. She studied to be a teacher, and her first job, her first professional job in the States was being a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
And actually, former Councilwoman Maria Quiñones Sanchez, she was her teacher as a baby, you know, a kindergartner. And I have several cousins on the island. Un saludo a Danis y Maite that are not only teachers on the island, but teachers in the campo, in Barranquitas, in those areas. You know that through austerity and the schools closing, that those teachers have had the hardest time. And we have to do everything. And you're right, son fuerte, and they're dogged, and they want to do the right thing for our children. But we have to be there to support our children. As we're having this conversation, you're going to be noticing, Familia, that in the crawl, we have the websites and the resources where you can go to that speak to what AFT is doing, how you can get involved in their Protect Our Kids campaign and the Lo Doy Idioma. They've got some incredible resources we're going to share throughout the show in English and Spanish. And in fact, they're doing some work around immigration, how to support our immigrant children as well. Evelyn, let's talk about how this ties into the labor movement. You know, labor historically has been a base. I mean, really such a base and critical and really kind of at times one of the few voices standing up for working people. Unfortunately, because of the attacks on the labor movement over the years, the percentage of working people that are in unions has declined steadily over the years, but they still play a vital role. So talk to people, particularly Latino working people that are not in labor unions and are not clear about how they can either engage in working with labor but just its importance at this moment. So can you speak to why it's important forever for Latino workers, even if they're not in unions, to understand its importance as part of this larger movement for working people?
So thank you for that question. I also, you know, have other hats, and another hat I have, I'm a national president of LACLA, which, you know, is Labor Council for Latin American Latin Advancement. And that's all the unions together and like Latinos. So, you know, sometimes we on labor ourselves, the narrative, you know, when we come in, you know, we have Latinos all over, and sometimes our own unions do not supply us with the right information or even different languages. So because for many Latinos, it may not be obvious why the labor movement is critical to pushing back on MAGA attacks. Our union, the AFT, stands at the intersection of two pillars. And let me be clear, these are strong pillars: the pillar of democracy and the pillar of opportunity. Public education and the labor movement, these pathways are how Americans can walk to get a better life, at least a shot at it. Authoritarian and the wealthy know that labor unions stand in the way of their plans to undermine democracy and get rich at the public expense. Billionaires love the idea that this administration is going to slash public services, privatize public education, and shrink Medicare and Social Security so that they can bring home a $4 trillion tax cut. Remember, they're looking for $4 trillion. What else were they doing standing behind Trump at that inauguration, waiting for their gravy train? Why is it important for Latinos to engage with the labor movement to fight that back? Because we represent the largest organization of working people in the country, because we have real political power, and because we are exercising it right now in the courts, in the streets. More on that in a minute, and then at the ballot box. Look, I know we lost the big election of 2024, the presidency, the Senate, and the House. I get it. We also lost the presidency in 2016, and MAGA had control of the House and Senate. But in 2016, we took back the House, won 7 governor's office, and 2 years after that, we took the presidency, the House, and the Senate. Even in 2024, we won lots of smaller elections. Just flip the Pennsylvania Senate seat and in a red district, and the labor movement has the infrastructure to mount a resistance movement in this difficult time. We represent what they fear. They're afraid of what we do, and they should be, the teaching of critical thinking, of honest history, of pluralism, because of their brand of greed. Power and privilege cannot survive in a democracy of diverse, educated citizens. So remember, the more information you know, the more you're educated, the more powerful we are.
I had this conversation I mentioned it. I went on a rant last week on the show with Christina about this concept that, and I think you can relate to it, Evelyn, and I want to shout out your team, Adriana and Cesar, that set up this interview and have been incredible supporters of me. Particularly Cesar has been one of my great allies in this work for decades, and your team is fantastic. That one of the things that's frustrating is that the people that have been in this, like you and your team and so many of our allies around the country and labor and in other parts of the movement, is that we know the Democratic Party ain't perfect. And oftentimes we have to kind of eat blank because even though we know, the Democratic Party frustrates us, and Latinos have not gotten a fair shake on every level, national, state, local. Very few times we really gotten a fair shake in this whole thing. But that we know, this is the party and this is the area of our politics that has our values. And it's like any other institution. We have to be there to make it better. And when, we get frustrated, when, folks decide to vote the other way for whatever seemingly, it's really confusing reasons,
Right.
we're sort of left to deal with picking up the pieces again and again and again. And I kind of think about that with the labor movement, right? Like, depending on the sector you're in, some sectors of the labor movement are sort of more inclusive of Latinos than others. But, it is so essential for Latinos, and we're so proud of you, Evelyn, and I can think of other, particularly Latina labor leaders that are in the fight with us, that we engage, join, and mobilize in these entities, because they're one of the few outlets for us to, first of all, get our people a living wage. And look, I tell people, I said, without AFT and AFSCME, which are my parents' unions, I'd have crooked teeth, and I wouldn't have health care and afforded school. And, and we can't have a healthy society moving forward unless Latinos are presented in the labor movement to grow them. So can you talk about that? Because we know it ain't perfect. And we know that the labor movement has a lot to learn about how to effectively engage the Latino community. But it's essential for us to move forward with our working folks. And by the way, I know we always highlight our Latina leaders here. It's also essential to get our Latino men back involved and focused on what's important as it relates to organizing and politics in our community. So can you speak more to that? Because I know you're a part of, and one of the few people that really speaks truth to power in these national conversations. But this piece, getting this piece right with Latinos in labor is critical.
So I think we're there. I look at the AFL-CIO. We have much more women on the executive board. We have Latinos now on the executive board, and I think it's a whole paradigm shift. Or even for ourselves, when I remember when I started in the union, I started as assistant teacher, para. I'm from the lower, as you said, and you too. So, I grew up tough. So I was always a tough girl, as God, I'm a woman of faith. So God polished me up. If I always say, I need God in my life, he just has me there to be a voice. So what my mandate is also, I have a lot of goddaughters in this movement, and I'm mentoring them and bringing them in and showing them how important and as a LACLA national president, that's what we're doing, building leaders, looking at young adults that could come in, and because a lot of us have been here for a while, and when the young generation sees us, I'm not going to listen to that person. They've been there for 50 years already. So how do we build community? We have to build community within ourselves. We as leaders have to also speak up for the people that are afraid to speak up, even in our own union. So in my union, we do everything bilingual now. Before it wasn't like that. In AFL-CIO, when I see something, is this in Spanish and this in a different languages? So we're building, and also leaders are moving up. I see, we have like 39 leaders in our executive board on LACLA, and we're building those up. And we look at people in Puerto Rico, people in Chicago, and they're excited. So we gotta make the labor movement exciting, and just not saying, oh, it's because we get a pension, because it's a right to passage. This is a calling. We are called to be I get very emotional. We are called to be the generals in this army.
100%.
Because if we don't fight, if not us, then who? And somebody had said a poem, and I don't know what, I think it was from a German thing. He says, when they came from the Jews, I did nothing. When they came from these, we did nothing. And now they came for me, and there was no one there. When they come for me, I want someone there. So it's incumbent that I start bringing those people in, and that you start bringing those people in, and leaders in the union start. And I see it happening. So I do see a transformation happen. Maybe it's not fast enough. I also see, as our people get educated, they see the importance of unions. Remember, many of our people come from different lands that don't have unions, or that, the farmers and all that, they come and they don't have rights. And then when Cesar Chavez did what he did, people are coming and are being educated and seeing what unions do. So I think the narrative is changing. I think the education is out there, and the mentorship is out there.
And, it's, labor, as one of the things that you're going to continue to hear me talk about in this program and in my work at Unidos around the country, is that, when the chips have been down, particularly this last cycle, labor was one of the few allies that really stood with the Latino community around the Latino vote. And you were front and center that, and your team, Cesar and Adriana, were front and center that last weekend, thinking about the amazing events we did in Pennsylvania together. It was labor standing there with us, and Latino-led labor. And it's also been a great example, and these are many conversations. You're going to come back, Evelyn, but I wanted to kind of put it in the queue for us to think about, to expand upon, where we've seen solidarity, particularly with our Black brothers and sisters. And just thinking about how my parents wouldn't have gotten into those public sector employee unions in the 70s without the Black leadership of Philadelphia. I'm sure you have a similar story. And, my godfather, Concepas Juan Ramos, that was a business agent here with Liona in Philadelphia, which was a primarily Black local. And they supported him when he ran for city council. And it's there's a lot of beautiful history, to your point, that a lot of our young people need to understand, that we've been intersectional before we had the language to talk about it. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Evelyn, I want to talk about faith, because that's the centerpiece of our lives. Yeah. And I think that's something that's being tested in this moment. And I know people would love to hear your perspective on it. Let's hear it. Watch a few best of Bomba Live clips that I've especially curated for Evelyn to enjoy from past episodes. And we'll come back with Evelyn DeJesus from the American Federation of Teachers here on Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Yeah.
How does it feel for you both to be such a strong influence on the Latino community and in the freestyle world? I'll start with Brenda.
You go first. Okay. I think the most important influence is that it doesn't matter where you come from, that if you're very optimistic and if it's something that you are passionate about, you should always work your hardest to be able to achieve your goal. And it doesn't, really need to be something where you look at a career or this is something that you want to do forever and say, I can never be famous, because there is always opportunity.
I got a few questions for you, okay? I've been dying to ask a Puerto Rican chef que wears a Puerto Rican hat, got cuatros in the background, got a flag. You represent, okay. Okay, here we go. Ready? Pastelillo de guayaba, ¿con queso o sin queso?
Oh, sin queso.
Thank you. Oh my God. Where the church
sin queso.
When they put queso in that, yo me pongo tan malo. Why are you putting queso, man? I said guayaba. I don't need queso. You know what? Use that space to put more guayaba. Okay.
That's it.
Pasteles. ¿Con ketchup o sin ketchup?
Con ketchup.
This is my man, yo.
Welcome back to Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Evelyn did perk up behind the screen where Brenda K. Star, and of course,
those are all days.
That was Betty D for Sweet Sensation, who co-hosts the show with us a lot and is a big part of the family. Karina was there as well, the other great freestyle artist, and of course, Brenda K. Star, another legend. But when Ellie Castro started talking about pateles, she really perked up. So it's funny because I actually disagree with both of Chef Gregorio's takes on it from Sabor with Love. I love Sabor with Love.
Yeah.
That's the one patel in a pan, man. He's a legend. And but I'm not. Do you put ketchup on your pateles, Evelyn?
No.
I don't either. See, I don't know.
put
Yeah, I
prejudice
don't.
in.
I guess the guayaba, I guess I'm ambivalent, but it's yeah, that
Yeah,
one
I
always
could take.
triggers me.
I think I would like it without queso. I'm kind of with him on that.
It's
My mother, I also, when you hear these stories, we all grew
Oh,
up with
yeah.
this. My mother used to love, when I used to go to Puerto Rico, she was in her 90s, and I would go to a bakery and always bring a box, and she knew I was coming. It was
Oh,
always
yeah.
pastelillo de guayaba. Me traíste. And she would sit there and eat and cry because she would remember when she was a young kid, a
Oh,
young
yeah.
girl
No,
in Puerto Rico.
those are the great Puerto Rican debates of our time. We're here with Evelyn DeJesus talking about kind of not only kind of the future of education in our country, but kind of the future labor movement and kind of what do we do now to deal with these attacks and forge a future for our children and our teachers and our educators. Evelyn, I want to talk about faith because I think you're one of the things that I think people of faith from in our activist space have been particularly frustrated by is that from our perspective, I don't want to speak for you, but from my perspective, that faith and religion has been weaponized
Correct.
to divide us and in ways that I think are very harmful and ultimately are going to mislead a lot of people. So, and just fundamentally, we have to rely on our faith more than ever at this moment in our history. So, can you talk a little bit about, as a woman of faith, how that's helping you manage this moment and any thoughts you may have for people watching this that are struggling with those same emotions and need to and feel like and are leaning on their faith to get through this time?
So thank you. I think about that a lot, and I pray. I'm a praying woman. I like to pray, and I'm a fasting woman. So, and I know, and for people that would understand when I say this, that I'm built for this, for such a time as this. I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I know that I was born to do it for this time. So I'm excited about that because my prayer is God, what is your will for my life? So I know this is it. So his will is his bill. His agenda is perfect. And I just follow his steps. That's number one. And I know that I've been able to come this far because I believe that my faith was built for such a time as this. I and the educators that I represent, I feel that we need to bring hope, esperanza to our students, to their families, and to fellow educators, to our communities. That may not be what we thought we signed up for when we went to college or the challenges before us right now. Instilling hope, because hope is the active, powerful opposite of fear. And because without it, we fall victim to fear, to resignation, and to paralysis, which is what the MAGA types are counting on, that we're afraid and that we get paralyzed. Hope sets goals and follows through on them. And as one of my rabbi friends, Randy Weingarten's wife, she says, hope is a choice. So I choose to be hopeful. I choose to know that things are going to get better, because hope is not the same thing as optimism, which is passive and just expects things to turn out on their own. We Latinas know better. Hope understands that we make the future. And how do we have hope? We need to dig deep down inside and remember our first principles. Our students are the reason we educators are in this battle. Our community are the reason that we fight. We are the carriers of this hope for them, for their familias, for the communities, para la comunidad. I believe carrying hope for the next generation is truly a sacred trust. And it is what helps me get up in the morning, put on my emotional, spiritual armor, and do what the Lord wants me to do. So I would never tell anybody else what their faith should tell them to do. But that's what works for me. And what works for me is that I have grandchildren. And when they call me and they say, Grandma, is it going to get better? I said, it's going to get better, because I have to believe it. Because if not, we get paralyzed. We don't move. So I am in this venture, and I know you're on it with me, and that our Latino communities are on it with us. We're here for the voice of the voiceless. We're here for the children of America. We're here for the communities of America. We're here to build trust, to build confianza, and to build love. That's what I'm about. And that's what my calling is. And I don't want it any other way. And sometimes when I get weary, when the word of God says, don't get weary of well-doing, I just cry unto him and say, God, dame fuerza, because the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I keep moving it for those that can't do it for themselves.
That's so beautifully said. Evelyn, not to get heavy here, but I wanted to share this with you at this moment. Yesterday, we're recording this the day after the 1-year anniversary of my mom's passing. And one of the things that, thank you. And, one of the things that, I wouldn't be doing this without my mom. And one of the great blessings my mom gave me was my faith. And, I was one of those kids that, was always overdressed, going to all the Catholic school stuff. And, and I have to share the picture of my communion. I'm in this like slick baby blue suit, little cute.
I gotta see it.
Oh yeah, no, I have it in my phone. It's really cute. Yeah, it's anyway, you'll see it. It's cute. But I say that because I've been part of the emotions of this process. Besides mourning her, but just think, now in this like Trump 2.0 era, part of me is kind of like, well, I'm glad my mom's not having an experience, but part of me is like, I really could use her wisdom. Yeah. And to your point, throughout the day, just thinking about her a lot, obviously, but thinking about how, first of all, she's always with me.
Amen.
She's always with me. And regardless of whether she's in a physical form here or not, and being part of that, being with me and being with us is giving us the strength to understand that, for lack of to use more of a modern term, she built me for this. Amen. And we are built for this. 3 generations ago, I would have been cutting sugar cane somewhere in Puerto Rico all day, for pennies. And so, this is not the worst that our people have gone through. And we have persevered. Just thinking about it from a Puerto Rican perspective, it's 533 years of 34 years of colonialism, 127 of which under the United States. Y coño, the biggest music star in the world is Spanish-speaking Puerto Rican that released an album, not only all in Spanish, but where the top 5 hits in the world were his songs, all in different genres of Puerto Rican music.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about perseverance and resilience and excellence. So, we'll get through it. Like you said, but you have to have the faith. You have to have the faith that you are built for this moment, and all of us will contribute to it. And it's so important that we support, understand, and follow the lead and support leaders like Evelyn, because if we don't support our children and our teachers, the rest of it don't matter that much, because that's our future.
Right.
Evelyn,
we don't have an educated population moving forward. How we go? We won't move forward, and that's what they want. That's what they want.
That's exactly right. And by the way, as I tell people, I say it's not a coincidence as rates of attainment of education and small business success and moving up the economic ladder, particularly of Latinas in our society, and Black women at this moment. It's not a coincidence that those 2 groups move up. Now they want to they'd rather destroy the whole thing, than us prosper together. And that's something that we have, and that's why this education piece of people really understanding what's happening is so important to understand it. When you're destroying education, you're destroying everybody's future, but especially the future of the Latino community.
Right. So you're not giving Pell Grants. You're not giving, so kids can't go to school. So if they can't go to college, what happens? That's right. And the thing is that we all know, we think about tyranny, we think about all of this stuff, and it's a scary thing. But at the same time, there's opportunities here. Look, when I grew up, we grew up with nothing, and we build. I used to work in Lamson's. I remember I get paid $60. My mother got 30. I got 30, and we build. We learned how to take care of ourselves. This generation is in a different place, but they're learning how to fight. And we did surveys, and they love labor. They love community. So we just got to get them connected to that so they can become advocates and they can become activists. I have a granddaughter she's in college, and she was going to do pre-med. I took her to Puerto Rico, and I became president in Puerto Rico. I won my election there, and she heard my speech, Ray. And then she called me and she said, Grandma, I'm changing my major from pre-med to immigration law. And she's graduating this May. And that touched me, I didn't say anything. I said, are you sure? And she said, Grandma, when I saw you up there, I didn't realize what you, because your abuela, like, psycho, that's my mom. Don't worry, that's my abuela. And when she saw what I did and how, the people I was with and people were congratulating and all, she said, you're making a difference. I want to make a difference for my people, and what better gift can a grandmother hear to have a grandchild say, hey, you've inspired me to do this. So as a woman of faith, I pray over my grandchildren. I said, Lord, protect them. And I know that, they're the next generation of fighters. What better gift can I leave this world as a legacy?
What a wonderful way to wrap up this conversation. Evelyn, please let us know throughout the show. We've been putting in the Chiron various websites and the email of Cesar Moreno that people can follow up with if they just have general questions, want to support the work of AFT to mobilize our community, particularly in education. There's also great work happening that intersects with the immigration issues that we're all involved in. Just any final words you have on this very inspirational episode of Bomba Live, Evelyn?
I'm an organizer, so I got to do a call to action if you allow me. So my
fantastic,
call to action,
absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the whole immigration thing, because again, educators and grassroots, it's not just about the DOE. It's also about what's happening with immigration and how they're trying to, divide us, because many of our people, even during the election, would say, well, if they don't belong here, they should go, even though they're from other countries. So I want to take a little bit what's going on, so educators, grassroots, organizers, faith and labor leaders play an important role in defending and protecting our immigrant communities from the threat of deportation. In red states and blue states, our locals are proactively supporting immigrants' youth and their families. They know that schools are places to learn, not deportation sites. Please get in touch with your local teachers union. We have prepared amazing resources for students and their families in 5 different languages, in Spanish and 4 other languages. A couple of weeks ago, I want to give an example. Our local in Chicago, the Teachers Union Chicago, showed a great deal of solidarity when there was a false alarm when ICE showed up at a middle school. Teachers, parents, administrators, labor and community showed up at the school to say, hell no, you're not taking our babies. And it's this type of solidarity that we need to see across the country. There's a tremendous amount of advocacy to be done at the state, municipal, and even district level to develop guardrails and support our students, educators, and support staff. All school employees need to know the protocols, making sure they have a plan, that they know the protocols of the plan if they encounter ICE. Talk to your state legislators, which we all know, city council members, school boards, and your local principals. If there isn't a policy in place, insist that they develop protocols. Talk to your school boards, talk to your parent PTAs. Make sure there's a policy in place in your school. Remember that even with the rescission of the sensitive locations memo, immigrant youth have rights guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. And when it comes to education access rights, we have to lean in on the rights that were litigated and won in 1982 Supreme Court case Plata versus Doe. We also have FERPA, Safeguarding Student Privacy Data, which work with local community partners to know your rights trainings. I'm not going to pretend that it's going to be easy living through this mass deportation, but there's a lot that regular folks can do to slow down the process and protect our kids in our community. Now, I want to talk about our national campaign, which is important to save public education. On March 4th, the AFT launched a nationwide ongoing campaign called Protect Our Kids and Communities, of which we're very thankful for your support and that of UNIDO's U.S. Action Fund. The National Day of Action included over 2,000 local actions at state capitol, town halls, public parks, and everywhere else. We had a virtual teaching in Detroit, a rally at the New York State Capitol in Albany, a clapping for students in Cincinnati, walk-ins in Chicago and Albuquerque, New Mexico, letter writing in Pittsburgh and Fairfax County, Virginia, and news conference in Florida, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. As our president Randy Weingarten said in Albany and New Haven, Connecticut, the message is really clear and simple. It's not okay to rob students of the education they need and deserve in order to give big tax cuts to the wealthy. What you're seeing on the ground across America are people, are parents and teachers together saying our kids need these services. We cannot cut them. In the AFT, we like to say we care, we fight, and we show up and we vote. We will fight in Congress, the courts, and the court of public opinion to make working families the priority. And we need everyone's help, todos. Our next day of action is April 5th. We're teaming up with the National Handoff Coalition, a national mass activism in defiance of the Trump Musk billionaire takeover of the Republican assault on our freedoms and community. Hands Off is an all-in movement for the pro-democracy, pro-worker movement, a demand, a warning, and a rallying cry that responds to the primary reason for our mobilization. You can find actions on handsoff2025.com and locate resources to save your communities, your neighborhood, your public schools at the AFT Protect Our Kids website at aft.org/protectourkids. And if you want to get involved, just find your local AFT affiliate. There are more than 3,500 throughout the country and in Puerto Rico. And we would love your help. Or just Google Protect Our Kids and you'll find like-minded folks like us, like the generals that we are, and that will continue to fight. Ray, muchas gracias for this great conversation. Thank you for caring so much for our community. And we stand together, shoulder. Remember, no one can tear these ropes once we're tied together. And we will need to do that. And I know we can do it because hope is there. Gracias.
Evelyn, there's so much inspiration I know that people watching this and listening are going to get from this conversation. And, please share with your granddaughter how much she inspires me as we end this conversation, because that was a life-changing moment, and she's going to continue your legacy, continue the labor, continue the work of supporting, the most vulnerable in our society, because that's what our faith teaches us to do, and what our family has taught us to do for generations. And it's always a special time to be with you again. Shout out to your incredible team, Cesar and Adriana. We've been throughout the show, sharing URLs for the various websites in Lodo Idioma, how you can support the work y'all are doing around protecting our children, the immigration element of your campaign. And people can reach out directly to Cesar Moreno at cmoreno@aft.org. Evelyn, AFT family, Labor family, thank you so much. We'll continue organizing in the streets and online, and we're going to do it together, unidos. Have a great day. Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for.